Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, recording this from the great Shenandoah area of Virginia. So that's why you see the background there. But I'm glad to have you back. And if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done that. It's on 30 different channels, including the one you're probably listening to now, obviously. And while you're out there, please visit globalinvestoragent.com. This is where you and I, the investor, can align ourselves with the agent who's trained to work with us. These are not typical agents. They know how to identify, analyze, and negotiate on and off market deals. They understand the methodology, the terminology. They got all the tools for everything that you need to help you succeed. So grab one of those guys. And if you are an agent, man, I couldn't emphasize this anymore. You know, I built a brokerage company on this model because of the frustration that investors feel and agents feel with each other over the years. That gap is narrowing. You can be part of the success. And the way the market's going, man, I got to tell you, you need to make this part of your business model. I'm just giving you a preaching moment here. You know, heed it the advice and click on the learn more button. Figure out how to make this part of your model. You know, we'll show you how. So in any case, great guest today, guys, all the way from beautiful Asheville, North Carolina. Another person near to the mountains, Alex Jarbo. So Alex, hey man, welcome aboard. I appreciate you taking your time to do this. You know.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Gary. I'm super excited to be on.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this because you're going to talk about a subject that we've been really focused on when it comes to real estate investing in the last year or two, which is short-term housing. I mean, it's just. I'm going to let you talk more about it, but this is something everybody needs to pay attention to. So if you wouldn't mind, kind of tell us the journey. How did you get from where you were to where you are now and what you're doing, you know?
Yeah. So I was originally stationed in Washington, D.C. I was a part of the Marine Corps Honor Guard there for 4 years. My entire enlistment was 4.5. About a year left of my enlistment, I decided that I didn't want to re-enlist. So I just started to pick up a lot of different business books, nothing in particular like real estate, just reading real estate, reading stock market, general business books, leadership books, all that fun stuff. And real estate had really caught my eye. There was an ad that had come across like Facebook when I was on one day of a flipping mentorship. So I joined that. And then I was on a group coaching call, and it was you actually had to pick up a phone instead of like a Zoom call to be a part of like a group coaching thing. And the gentleman who had ran that mentorship was saying that flipping's great, but all of his like long-term wealth outside of flipping was tied into short-term rentals. And this was back in like 2015, 16. And so that really caught my eye. My ears really perked up there. So I hopped on a one-on-one call with him. I was like, hey, I'm really open to moving anywhere. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, but I was like, I'm not really looking to move back where I grew up. So like, I'm really open to moving anywhere in the country. So he had helped me decide on he helped me choose, he taught me how to choose a vacation rental market. And there's hundreds of ways to do that now, but at the time I was engaged, now married, and my wife had decided for me because there was like 3-4 options, and she fell in love with Asheville just from the pictures and some of the stuff. So the day I got out of the Marine Corps, moved directly here to Asheville, North Carolina, got my real estate license, which I'm still an active full broker. I'm a broker in charge, but I don't active. I just refer everything out. But I did the brokerage thing for 2 years while I was looking for my first rental. And what I realized really quickly was either everything was way out of my price range at that time, or it was in my price range. It just wouldn't have done well as a short-term rental. Maybe a long-term rental, but not really a short-term rental. Nothing really unique about the property that would have like drawn people to that, whatever I was looking at. So my very first real estate investment besides the couple flips that I had done previous to that, my very first long-term hold real estate investment that I own to this day was a ground up development. It was an 800 square foot A-frame, like I said, that we still own to this day. And then one turned into two really quickly, two turned into three really quickly, brought on some investor capital from some friends initially that were seeing what I was doing. And then that spiraled into, or I guess spiral is the wrong word, but that evolved into doing some larger deals, teaming up with funds and raising capital. And now we're either developing, purchasing, or managing close to $40 million worth of vacation rentals just in this market alone. And beyond that, we're probably like, just to focus on, we're going to be focusing on other markets next year, because we're going to be coming up on like 50 units by the end of next year, just in this market alone.
Okay. Yeah, I love the Asheville area. My mother was born there, and I used to go to boys camp when I was a child out there, near there, called Camp Greenville. It wasn't too far from Asheville, and there's some famous places out there. I mean, there's Chimney Rock, Lake Lanier, I think is it. It might be Georgia. But in any case, Sliding Rock, you can slide down this riverbed on your rear end and freeze some water, but just an amazing place. Plus, you've got the Biltmore,
you have the Biltmore, you have the Grove Park. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole Vanderbilt history. I mean, it's just an amazing place. And I can see where it's definitely a destination area. It has been for a while. So the market there, you always have your choice. Short-term, mid-term, long-term rentals being more traditional. People renting their own place are going to live in for a year, and maybe it's a young couple or a single or a couple with a one child or something. You got the midterm, which is your corporate housing. That your traveling business traveler that has an assignment for 6 months, or a traveling nurse. And you got the short term, which are destination travelers, and people want to go to Asheville and stay there for a week and go up into the mountains and have a lot of fun. So your focus is exclusively in the short term, or have you ever dabbled in the other two?
Yeah, I've been in short terms for a little over 7 years now. Yeah, just practically full time. When I got out of the military, I went to school I went to school full time. I have my undergrad, my MBA, and finishing up my doctorate. But I've always done school, like even when I was in the military. So I was just always, outside of school, I was always just focused on short-term rentals and real estate. I've read all my mentors and everything none of my real estate mentors are in short-term rentals. So it's like I've always had like multifamily, mobile home park, self-storage, long-term, single family, whatever. So I've most of the stuff that I've learned from capital raising has come from my multifamily mentors and whatnot.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, there's and I'm not going to say that you shouldn't do any of those three. I've done all three of them, but I know from experience, and I'm sure this is why you're focused on the short term, is the money's actually better, and you have a different set of rules and regulations. But I'm gonna put a plug in for short and midterm rentals here. Again, I'm not knocking long-term rentals. We have to have them. As a society, we got a certain segment of population that just is going to rent. Historically, it's been about a third. It's now closer to 40% now. The challenge is
my generation for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And as that demand increases and a larger percentage of the population looks to renting versus buying for a multitude of reasons, the government is going to apply more regulation and legislation. So again, I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm not, anti-government kind of, I'm not one of those people. I'm just a realist. I've been doing this for 37 years, and I'm telling you, you can see the trend, the way it's developed over the last generation, and it will likely continue as long as the economics continue the way they are, the demographics, the social graphics. It's just a fact that we have to deal with in this business. So for me personally, and what I've been having people that I teach focus more on is more of the midterm and short-term rentals, because the laws are more favorable to the owner. Whereas the long-term rentals, the laws have been shifting more pro-tenant and less in favor of the owner. And again, I'm not judging it's right or wrong or good or bad, but in terms of business, you need to be able to make a profit. You need to be able to keep your expenses in check. And whenever there's more regulation and legislation, I can assure you there's going to be more expenses.
Yeah.
So any case, so tell us about your plans. I mean, you're in the Asheville area. Have you thought about expanding to other areas? I mean, like Hilton Head, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, or even the East Coast of North Carolina. I mean, it's just a beautiful area. Wilmington, the Wilmington area, North Carolina. and it's not really overdeveloped yet. So is that part of the game plan, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I've looked even beyond that to like the West Coast and looked at some East Coast markets. Helen, Georgia has always really caught my eye. And I'll tell you my little and you'll relate to this. So I love to be in mountain markets that aren't really known to be like ski resort or snowboarding resort, whatever. It's just I love those mountain markets like Asheville, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg. I would say those are a little bit saturated. But those mountain markets where something is, you can't take the landscape away, and then if you build something unique on top of that, which is what we do, we don't just build like boxes or single family houses. We build something unique where the property is an experience outside of the city that the guest is visiting. But yeah, I've gravitated towards mountain markets. So Helen, Georgia's on my list. Some upstate New York properties. I would love to do something in Michigan, but that's a little bit more seasonal. Like I said, those mountain markets tend to be a little bit less seasonal. Like nothing gets more picturesque or nothing. When you think of a cabin in the woods in the winter, like that is the picture. That is the picture. And then the summer just brings everyone else like to the city and whatnot. So yeah, I've Charleston, South Carolina is one of my favorite places to visit. One of my close mentors lives there, and I've been there a couple times. But yeah, it's like there are these, like, I call them pocket markets. There are these like pocket markets throughout the whole country where when people say, hey, where should I, like, if I'm talking to friends or maybe even some mentees and I go, hey, like where I want to develop something, but I don't want to do it downtown or blah, 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 because it just wouldn't work. Where should I go? What I always say to that, and I always use the two examples of New York, like East Coast, West Coast. So New York, you have upstate New York, and then like the Catskills and whatnot. That's been a really popular market in the last 5 years. And then on the other side, you have like San Diego. People will drive up to Joshua Tree, Big Bear Lake all the time. So like there are these pocket markets that people, I like to say, where are people taking extended weekend vacations to, like in your area? That's anywhere between a 45-minute drive to up to a 2-hour drive, where people can go up there on a Friday, Thursday, and come back on a Sunday. Pretty easy drive. So that's where I like to focus at. I love Bryson City. I would love to do something that's about 45 minutes away from me. That is probably the closest market I would like to get to. But with everything that I've learned about team building and how to manage these properties at scale, there's not really any difference between me going 30 minutes away from me or me going cross country, besides me actually visiting the site and purchasing the land.
Yeah. Well, I like your style. I mean, the thing is, I know a lot of people will think about Florida because it's year round, but there's a difference between year round and four season. If you're in the Catskills, it's four season. You got winter, spring, summer, fall, and each season has its own characteristics and things that appeal to people. And I mean, if they just think of Henry David Thoreau. He wrote some famous words about all four seasons, and there's some great pictures you can get with his captions in there. And I like that. I mean, I love the, believe me, I love the beach. I'll be there this weekend.
Yeah, I love the beach too.
Yeah, but there's something to be said about the mountains, man. You've got the babbling brooks and the birds. You don't have all the noise of traffic and cars and planes and stuff like that. So what's interesting is we're kind of letting the cat out of the bag. Everybody's gonna think, well, I'm gonna buy some mountain properties now. As opposed to just the beach. But plus, I love Florida. My state of residence is actually Florida, but it is just, I mean, attracting people in droves. I mean, just daily, I forget the numbers, some ridiculous, almost 1,000 new people a day move to Florida.
Crazy.
I mean, there's only so much land to go around there, especially when a lot of it's swampland. But it's gotten more expensive. And here are some of the places you're mentioning. Is Helen, Georgia, is that like northeast of Atlanta, up past Lake Lanier and near the state line of North Carolina?
Don't know where it's in regards to Atlanta. I know it's like it's a couple hours away from me. It's just that one, that market, same thing with a couple of markets in upstate New York, really looked like Asheville to me. Like they looked like Asheville. They had a draw of a downtown area, but they also had like a recreational outdoor type feel. That's another really powerful strategy that a lot of people have talked about or a couple people have talked about the last 5 years of me doing this, is like investing close to like national parks and national forests, because there's built in. Now people automatically go to the Smoky Mountains when someone says that, but it's like, I mean, even if you look at like Beckley, which is and I think that's West Virginia.
It is.
That's the newest one. Yeah. So Beckley, I mean, Beckley's the newest one, and there's nothing in that market, so we can let that cat out of the bag. Like there's barely any vacation rentals, but with it being a national park, people love visiting national parks. It's on their list to hit all of the national parks before, like on their bucket list. So there's a built-in customer base. There's a built-in guest list for national parks and investing close to like entrances and whatnot.
Yeah. Hey, well, let me ask you this. So we talked about some of the markets, potential markets for people to look into. Now, what about strategy? So would you mind maybe giving us an example? Like what was your first one like? What were the steps? What were the challenges and things like that? I want people to get a feel for how you definitely can make money, but it's not like you flip a switch. I mean, it's a process to follow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because like whenever you talk to someone who's done something that another person is trying to do, they always say like, I don't recommend doing what I did, jumping straight into development. But because like with development, you just don't know what you don't know. It's just there's so many variables. But I mean, I've taught enough students to like on my mistakes and whatnot. But the biggest thing with that one was just understanding how easements worked. And I was working with I had an agent that was helping me when I was licensed, and both of us were pretty inexperienced on understanding development. And my GC was relatively new as well because everyone was looking for a GC at that time. But our very first one, that A-frame, I can give you the numbers real quick. So we got a second home construction loan, which was at just 10% down. And then it costs about $15,000 to furnish that property. We did come in at budget. It was about $185,000 to build that thing before COVID. And then 10% down. So that was 18.5 plus another 15,000. So you're looking at what, 33, say 35,000 just to be safe with, if you want to tack on another $3,000 for holding costs, say 40,000. So 40,000 all in to build that 800 square foot A-frame. That one consistently has brought in, the first year it netted about 40,000 after debt service and expenses. So technically the cash on cash was 100%, which is nuts when I say that, because some people don't believe that. Last year it netted us 54,000, and it's on track to do those same numbers. So that was the very first one. Granted, prior to COVID, before labor costs and materials costs, they're starting to stabilize, but they're never going to be back to where they were prior to 2020. So I would probably tack on another 30 to 40% to that. But at the same time, even if my all-in cost was 300,000 and my out-of-pocket expenses were say 70, 80,000, like, I mean, your cash on cash is 60 to 70%. So that's if you're doing one at a time and you're developing them yourself. Once you start bringing partners in and you start doing them at scale, the returns do drop slightly, especially with the interest rates today. But yeah, that very first one, I mean, that one has been our cash cow. And it's just been cranking out essentially a salary, just that one. So we're in the process of building two more right next to that one as well. What's really cool about that one is that one came with, it was 2 2-acre lots that were adjacent to each other. They were attached to each other. And the bank wouldn't lend on both of them when they were subdivided for some reason. So the goal, it was 45,000 to purchase that land. So the goal was to essentially get that one parcel to appraise for the purchase price. So it did. And we essentially went to the sellers and like, can you sign this contract for $1 for the other side of the property? And they were out of town. They didn't even think twice about it. So at closing, we got that other parcel for free. Like we owned that property free and clear.
Nice.
So once that first one was built, I was able to go to a bank. And at that time, when I first started, there were no short-term rental construction loans out there. Not even credit unions would look at stuff like that, at least in my market, from what I could find. But that was like another 2 years when I decided to pull the trigger on getting another construction loan for that area on those two other ones. And we did pause for 2 years on the development, but we literally went to the bank and we used that land as collateral to then get another construction loan. So technically the return's been infinite on that first one, because if those two are not fully built out yet, but if they do anything close to that first one, I mean, you're looking at a net, say on the low end, of like 120,000 for all three of them after debt service and expenses. So that's pretty nuts for someone who just put in 40,000 initially. I mean, even if I put 100 grand initially into it. So
yeah, that's a good year.
yeah.
You know, so and only three properties. So step us forward now. Uh, you're still in the area? Are you growing and expanding as far as the type of property you build, like more units per
Yeah.
structure? Kind of fill us in there if you don't mind.
So that came from, so we went to doing like purchasing and developing cabin communities of like, I call them micro resorts of like anywhere between 6 to 20 units.
Okay.
And where that came from was I had to get in my county, it's called a short-term rental complex permit. And it's a permit that it's not just for one unit, it's for anything that's over 2 units that are adjacent to each other. And it was for a development deal. And what I realized was a lot of people would stay away from that permit because they were just afraid of the city and the county. And I saw that as a barrier to entry in a good way, like in terms of someone like just being able to take a short-term rental and Airbnb, like just a normal house and turn into a short-term rental relatively easily. People were afraid of getting this permit. So I went in front of the board, put the whole permit together myself, didn't use an attorney, and I got a 7-0 yes right off the bat for that very first one. And that sort of opened up the whole box of doing larger properties, and with the economies of scale and everything, that the larger properties were easier to develop than the smaller ones. It was almost the same amount of time on my end. Outside of just like putting in my input for designing, there was really no difference in me driving out to a property that was 1 acre or 20 acres, like in terms of the time I was putting in. My GC obviously was putting in more time, the engineers and everything, but for my time, when I was putting into it, it was the same exact permit to do 3 or to do 10. Once you get over 10, which once you start getting over 10 in my market, it's a hotel permit, which again, I've realized a lot of people who are doing this at scale, who are doing these boutique hotels. I've met a lot of people who have done multifamily conversions into boutique, like satellite boutique hotels. Those people just get hotel permits, even in the strictest short-term rental areas. Again, every single city is going to be different. Every single county is going to be different. But a lot of people are skirting the short-term rental laws if they can do it at scale and can afford to raise the capital to do it. They're skirting the short-term rental laws by doing hotel permit stuff. So doing the bigger stuff, the reason why I got into doing the bigger cabin communities and the larger micro resorts that we're doing now is it just came out of necessity of what's the best use of my time. And I've realized that like that first unit I just talked about with the A-frame, I looked at like 65 listings. Like I drove out to 65 listings. I probably looked at 200 listings on my computer. And when you start doing these larger ones, I mean, they're usually there's not 215 to 50 acre parcels out there. So the base is smaller and everything. So yeah, to answer your original question, that just came from out of a necessity of I wanted to do more faster. And I realized that doing more faster was actually easier. Like building out bigger properties was easier. And it opens you up to a different GC base as well. Like the more professional GCs, they understand that as well. Like the best use of my time is not to go build a $200,000 A-frame. It's to build out a $5 million community with this person.
So when you do the community there, is it you're strategically placing them near the parks? So you've got the amenities there, like trails and parking, all kind of things like that. But within your communities, do you have anything there, even just like a venue for them to grill and have a outdoor campfire, things like that? We'll be right back with the Massive Passive Cashflow podcast after I invite you to Monday Night Live. Every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, I teach a class without fail for you on subjects ranging from flipping to buying rentals, managing rentals, wholesaling, commercial, creative purchasing techniques, analyzing properties, identifying properties, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of subjects. And if you are a licensee, if you have a real estate license, you should definitely tap in because there are a lot of investor agents also in the class. Many of them are on the global investor agent team. So you can learn from them as well as from me how to actually work with investors correctly and profitably. All right, we'll see you Monday night. The link is in the show notes. Go ahead and register. We'll get right to the Massive Passive Cashflow podcast.
Yeah, each one has its own bonfire pit, and then each one has its own grill area. I will say that we just purchased one that was a historic building with 6 cabins on it on 12 acres. And then it backs up to protect it like a land that's in a conservatorship. That one we turned into a wedding venue. We built a $60,000 wedding pavilion for a ceremony. And then we also have like a 25 by 30 or 40 tent as well in between the two cabins. So the common areas there with the wedding pavilion and everything, like we learned that we learned that business model completely this year of like how to generate leads for weddings and how to balance that with running a vacation rental company as well. So yeah, we like to we'll talk about it at the end, but the biggest one that we're working on right now is a 20 unit development. Half of it's already done, but that one is probably going to be one of the more premier wedding venues in the area. And we run the numbers both ways. We run it as a wedding venue with selling the lodging with it, and then we run it also as just a normal vacation rental complex or a resort. Both of those numbers have to stand on their 2 feet. It's just good to have them together. It just makes more sense to do them together. But when I underwrite the properties, I don't look at it like, okay, what if no weddings happen this year, or no events happen this year, no corporate retreats happen this year? Okay, cool. It's still we are still able to cash flow and pay our investors just by running it as a vacation rental complex.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because we were looking at a project like that a few years ago up in Ontario, Canada. Beautiful, 15 acres right on it was a river that was dammed, so it had a lake plus the river. It was right there. And we did have challenges with the zoning, but hearing you've been able to accomplish that, it was the model is amazing, because people like those destination type venues for weddings, and a beautiful scenery. And then we were going to build the housing right there, basically 12 unit little, micro hotel, if you want to call it that, but very aesthetic, very natural, lots of, natural stone and wood from the area. And all in, I think it was about $2 million. But the cash flow potential, when we studied the market, the business, of having a venue like that, it wasn't just the weddings. We could have corporate events there. We could even have funeral receptions there. I mean, all kinds of stuff we were capable, it was possible to do. Teaching, cooking classes, for example, and having a little a hobby farm, and take families through there and show them how vegetables are planted and grown. I mean, it was an amazing model, and a lot of potential cash flow too. Well, I'd be definitely interested in hearing more about that. So when what would you say is the economic outlook going forward? I mean, to me, it's almost recession proof, because people still want to take these trips. They still will go on. They'll still go to the movies. They'll still go to dinner. But what are your thoughts on that looking out ahead? Next couple of years.
So I started talking about this early last year before Airbnb did their whole algorithm switch and everything. Mm-hmm. So you need to look at the outlook going forward. Obviously, is, to me, like as a person standing here with my rentals that are cash flowing on a monthly basis, when some people are screaming that the sky is falling in the vacation rental market. Those are people that got in the business the same way that people got into real estate in 2005, 4, 5, 6, where they were just relying on appreciation. I compare that to people who just purchased a normal house, whatever it looked like, threw it on Airbnb and then it cash flowed. I feel like those days are done. You need to look at Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, Expedia, if you can get your property on it, and a direct booking site. All of those, say Airbnb, VRBO, let's just focus on those two, because those are the biggest ones. Those are just distribution channels. You need to just look at those as marketing channels. That it is a place where the eyeballs are at, and that's where you're pricing your property. You need to, if you're getting into vacation rentals and you're managing them yourself, you need to understand that you are in the hospitality business. You are not in the Airbnb business. That's very important, because then that opens you up to other distribution channels, depending on how big you can get. There are 30, 40, 50 distribution channels out there, depending. There's local ones and everything like that. On top of that, what the trend is going towards now is direct booking sites. And it's gone full circle now. Back in the day, before Airbnb, VRBO existed, you had to pick up a phone to book a vacation rental and talk to a mom and pop owner, or even talk to a management company, but it was through a phone. That's gone full circle now, where people want to book direct again. And managers are realizing that because they have more control over the guest. If anyone has ever had any experience with dealing like with Airbnb support recently, it's not that great. It's they tend to side with the guests a lot, and there's a very weak like chain of communication that happens just with Airbnb. That's just been my experience, but I've heard that from other hosts as well recently. When there are other pieces you need to put in place with a direct booking site, but what we do is, just like if you're running Facebook ads or Google ads, you run those ads. I look at that as putting my properties on Airbnb, VRBO, to use those as examples. Once the guest stays with us, we do an email capture through a company called StayFi. And what StayFi is, it's a little disk that plugs into the back of your router, creates a landing page for your internet. So people there's no password. People just if you ever been to a Starbucks, airport, you have to put your email address in and your name to get access to the internet. You can easily get that from the one guest, but like one of our properties sleeps 16 people. So like we wouldn't get all their emails. We would just get one person's email. With this, we're able to get everyone's email, and then we send seasonal emails out. It's very simple. And then we redirect them towards our direct booking site. And the value proposition is really simple. It's cheaper and it's easier to book through us. You've already stayed with us and hopefully had a good stay with us, so you trust us. Right. And there's nothing against the terms of service from what I've seen with Airbnb and VRBO. You can't take guests off when they're trying to book with you. So like if someone comes to you and they're like, hey, I want to book your place through Airbnb, you can't be like, hey, go to this direct booking site. That's completely off. But there's nothing against terms of service from what I've seen in the companies I've dealt with to take them off after they've stayed with you. So that just goes to the whole thing of it makes your business, again, it's not an Airbnb business, it's a hospitality company. It makes your business more valuable because now you have a direct booking site and you're building an email list at the same time. So that is the trend going forward, is people need to be focusing on more distribution channels. You're not just on Airbnb and VRBO, and then you need to focus on controlling your guests, controlling your customer, which is done through a direct booking site. So that's the business plan right there. So,
well, I appreciate that. That's a lot of good insights for if you're listening to this. I would replay that and particularly focus on that last 2 to 3 minutes that Alex gave us, guys, because that's gold right there.
Yeah, we're hosting across all of our properties, I'd say close to 100 guests. Like if they're fully booked out, say 50 to 100, depending. So say 50 average daily stays 3 days. So like we're adding about 100 people to our email list every single week just on the properties we have alone. With our business tripling in the next 12 months alone, I mean, you can just triple that 50 number. Like you're adding 150 a week. You're adding 600 people a month to your email list. That's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
You're building an email list for free.
I know it's good old fashioned. It's relationship building, and reminds me one of my colleagues. He's up in the Pittsburgh market. And you wouldn't think of Pittsburgh as a destination area, but who's going to go to Pittsburgh to go to vacation? Well, they're not necessarily going on vacation. They're going to see festivals because they're great with their festivals in Pittsburgh. They have 3 major professional sport teams there, a couple of major universities, the 3 rivers. I mean, and you add on the concerts and all that. He does extremely well, and he does use Airbnb. But what he does is different. Is his name's Gustavo, by the way. He has his own website. So once he captures people through the other third party, like VRBO and Airbnb, he has a website where he promotes all of the events coming up, the concerts, the sporting events, college and pro, all the festivals all year round. And he can host weddings and he has properties where people can stay for weddings and things like that. And he's like 95% booked in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So, but the thing I like about it is he uses these third parties to attract people initially, but he maintains a relationship and serves them in the future through his website and through his Facebook presence and so forth, almost like what you're doing. And that's just smart business, So, any case, I know we're probably out of time, and we've been doing this for a half hour, but it's been one of my favorite podcasts, actually.
Oh, I appreciate that, sir.
Yeah. Any final words of wisdom? Also, if people do you entertain people investing with you? Let's say you're looking for funds to build another project. Are you just going to private lenders? Are you entertaining people that, like some of the guests here listening, to the podcast? Could they participate also, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we're doing we do probably one big raise a year. This one's our biggest one that we're doing this year. We're doing it for this 20-unit development. In my opinion, it's the top hospitality investment in the country right now. I've looked at all of them, and it's funny that it's in my backyard. But it's beautiful mountain views in a gated community. It's built into the HOA, which is rare, and it can't be voted out of the HOA. But yeah, we're doing a massive raise for that. We just built out the entire website just for this deal itself. And people can check that out. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes somewhere, but it's openatlas.investments. As you guys can check that out. Click the Invest Now button on the right-hand side, and that'll take you over to our deal page where you guys could schedule a call with me if you guys are interested in it. That deal page has everything on it with the investor videos and the pitch deck and the appraisal that we just got done from CBRE. So I've taken everything that I've learned from the multifamily side, from the commercial real estate side, and applied it to this deal. So really, really cool to have an appraisal done by CBRE on this property. It's one of the first times they had done something like this. It was like the only team in the country that appraises these micro resorts. And it came in at the purchase price, which is really cool to do because we just got it as like a check in the box, but it's really cool to now show that, hey, this property actually appraised for the purchase price. And it's done by one of the top real estate financial firms in the country. But yeah, that's if you guys are interested, like I said, it's openatlas.investments, and that'll take you to the investor website.
Okay, openatlas.investments. So everybody write that down if you're driving. This will all be in the show notes on the podcast. You can go to the realestatewithgarywilson.com. Under resources, you'll see the podcast. They're all out there. This will be out there too with all the show notes. And if you don't mind, please leave a review for the podcast. I mean, Alex has given you a lot of gold today. I mean, you just, and it, we do it as a community service. For you, it's completely free, and all we ask is your review in return. So we appreciate you doing that. And while you're out there, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and also visit one more time globalinvestoragent.com. If whether you're an investor or an agent, go out there and check it out. We're really making a concerted effort right now because of the way the economy is. Traditional real estate, there's just not a lot for sale. And instead of you going hungry or giving up and getting out, click on the Learn More button on the globalinvestoragent.com website. Have a conversation. See if you can make this part of your model. And I think you should. It's exactly what I did. And here I am sitting here looking out over Shenandoah Mountains while I'm doing the podcast. I'll be at the beach this weekend. Life could not get any better because I'd made that one move all those years ago. So Alex, man, thanks again for doing this. You've been a real heck of a community servant to provide all that you provided. And I can't wait to speak to you further about some of the things you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Appreciate you having me on.
Oh, I'm glad to do it, man. And for you and everybody, God bless you and your families. And we will see you on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.